Well, here we are in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm here and I have the privilege to be with my friend and fellow Vietnam veteran, Larry Stanczyk. And Larry, I can't tell you what a thrill it is for me to be able to be with you again since our last, when we were at the reunion the last time. And as I shared with you before, what we're doing is we're actually putting together an oral history of our unit and the guys that were in Charlie Company and so forth. And the way I see it, I guess what my vision is all of our stories are like a big puzzle, and each of us has a puzzle piece. And if the more of those I get, my goal is to get the whole picture, to get the whole puzzle put together.
Okay.
And so yours is a very, very important puzzle piece to me. So that's why we're sitting down today to get your story in your own words for, not only people today or your family today, but for generations to come. They're actually going to be able to see you talking in living color, and it for generations to come. We're actually committed to having these interviews available for 100 years. We're gonna have those funded and be on the website and so forth, and they'll be in the National Archives, of course, and places like that. So it's an interesting thought. Not only your grandkids, great grandkids, but just keep going generational. Someday somebody's going to go, let's look at the family tree. And Larry Stanczyk comes up, and somebody said, wait a minute, let's Google that. And they Google your name, and lo and behold, here is your interview. Think about that. It's going to be pretty amazing. And it's like, my wife is big into Ancestry.com, and guess what? We've got a live Ancestry.com here. In other words, you're actually going to be telling, your story. So I'm just going to start this interview out real simply. I'm going to just ask you, where were you born and raised, Larry?
Well, I was born in near Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and most of my life I was raised in Wisconsin. Moved around a little bit, but Wisconsin is home. So once I got married, then we moved around a little bit more, went out to Colorado, and now we're living in North Carolina.
Tell me a little bit about your folks.
Well, my dad was a farm boy, my mom was a farm girl, and they met at a dance. And my dad served in World War II, and they met and got married, and I'm the oldest. And he worked for many different jobs, and he was a hardworking man. I was very lucky. I had great parents. He owned a tavern out in the country, which also had a grocery store and a gas station. And he was someone that I admired because he never forgot what it was not to have. And he helped many, many people.
And did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one sister and 5 brothers. One has passed away, but the other 4 are still with us. My mom is still alive. She's 91. My dad passed away in 93.
Okay. What are your siblings? What are their names?
The first one is Clarence. We call him Peanuts. Everybody knows him by Peanuts. My brother Lenny was next, and he's the one that passed away from leukemia. And then came my sister, Ruth, and then came my brother Roger and my brother Scott.
All right. Now, we're going to talk about your service now. When guys either volunteered or they got drafted, what was your story?
I got drafted.
Okay.
Jerry and I were married.
Okay, so you were married at the time?
We were married.
Talk to me just a little bit about how you and your wife met and got together.
Well, Jerry and I met at a dance, and after that I asked her if she would like to go home and, with me, and we did, and we started out dating a little bit and everything else, and I thought blonde girls with brown eyes were great, so from there we hit it off, and we've been married 51 years.
And in your case, you were right.
Yes.
Actually.
Good choice.
So you got drafted.
Yes.
Okay, now wait a minute. If a guy was married Wasn't there something that they said, we'll give you a break and we won't draft you in those days?
No, there were a couple of us that were married, and we both just got drafted and went to Milwaukee. And
How old were you at the time?
I was 20,
Okay.
so yeah, it was an experience.
And where were you inducted? Where did you actually go into the service?
In Milwaukee.
Okay.
But then went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. That's
Okay.
where basic was.
Yep, and that's where I ended my military career. When I came back from Vietnam, I had 6 months left to do,
Yep.
and they sent me to Fort Campbell, and I was a DI there for 6 months.
Oh wow.
And Fort Campbell, as it turned out, I was there during the wintertime. It was the coldest cold that I had ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was the humidity or something, and the wind, oh my gosh, it was cold.
Yes.
Of course, coming back from Vietnam, I suppose, didn't help any.
Probably
I wasn't acclimated towards anything. So what did it feel like when you got that draft letter?
Well, we knew it was coming because all my classmates were being drafted and everything, so it wasn't really a surprise. Jerry had our child in November, and I got drafted, of course, in March. So she raised him up for the first year, a little over a year by herself, with her parents and my parents helping.
That brings a different dimension into a guy's life. I remember most of us over there were single.
Yep.
Some guys thought they were engaged,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes during their tour of duty that changed.
Yes, it
when
did.
they got a letter
Yep.
stating that his fiance is now engaged to his best friend. Do you remember some
Oh,
of
yeah.
some of the guys got those
Oh yes.
those letters? But so not only are you married, but you've got a child.
We had a child.
And so you're going to a place that I know you had to have heard was not a good place to be. And did you ever have that talk with Jerry and say, something could happen. I might, not be coming home. Did you ever have that discussion?
I never had that discussion with her, with myself.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to come back
Yeah.
because of the fact of the number of people that were being killed, or else I'm going to come back and definitely going to have some physical issues.
Yeah. So that was just I have to imagine that was on your mind a lot.
Yes, I was very fortunate though. I was lucky because Jerry wrote me letters every day.
Mm-hmm.
She also sent me packages once a month, but I also had cousins and nieces that would write to me.
Boy, and we loved getting mail.
Oh,
didn't we?
love was that was everything.
Oh my goodness.
That was everything. That was how we touched being back home.
Yep, you're right.
Because the separation was everybody's mind.
So tell me a little bit about basic training.
Basic, you know what? I was wondering what I was doing there. Because simply, you ran in the morning for breakfast. We call it chow, of course. Then you ran most of the day from one place to another. Then you stood and wait, and you say, okay, you're going to get your shot. Well, they didn't tell you how many shots you're going to get in the arm and which arm, because both arms got it. The haircuts were wonderful. I mean, you never have to worry about long hair over there.
Will you ever forget? I know in the group that I was in when they took us to get our haircuts, I was from San Diego, California.
Okay.
So there was a lot of LA kids and long hairs. We called them long hairs in those days.
Yes.
But it was actually enjoyable to watch some of those guys get all that hair, shaved off their head. And we actually had guys crying, sitting in the chair crying because I guess their hair meant that much to them,
Well,
But when all was said and done, everybody looked alike.
Oh, they did. And the barber would ask you, how would you like your hair cut?
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
they'd come out and you wouldn't recognize them because it changed their facial so much,
So when you graduated from from basic, you didn't really know what your next move was going to be until you got your orders, right? To AIT or wherever.
Correct.
What MOS did you get out of basic?
11B let me see. 11C mortars. 11B20, isn't it? I forgot what mortars is already.
Well, 11B40 is infantry.
Okay, I
Or
was infantry.
11B10 or what, it
Yeah.
goes 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever.
Right.
So your name is called and they say this MOS. Did you even have a clue what it was?
No. We knew we were in infantry. That was it.
Yeah.
Because everything was, anything 11B was infantry.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what was your initial thought then? Were you thinking, I know I'm going there anyway? I mean, did you I know the group I was in, during AIT, there were rumors going around that they were going to send us to Germany. And of course, that was a joke. I mean, you know, I think some of the senior DIs and that used to do that just to torment us, you know, because in reality, you know, everybody was going to Vietnam.
Oh, they were.
You know, the only way you'd get to Germany is if they stopped there to pick up mail and then went to Vietnam. But so tell me, where did you go to your advanced training?
We went to Fort Ord, California.
And that's where I did my basic and AIT.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's
Wow.
where I was at.
Yes.
And so talk to me about advanced. Well, it's not called advanced infantry training for you guys, right? Is it called advanced weapons training?
No,
or
it was advanced infantry training, but with our MOS, we were trained in the mortars, which we got very little training of. You know, I mean, the training you got in AIT really didn't amount to a lot.
So basically, you
them.
went through a lot of the training I did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Except then there was like a specialty. Now, so if you were gonna operate a mortar, let's go back to AIT. Were there certain basics like, well, you know, you put the plate down and you hook up the tube, but how did they actually teach you how to get the round where you wanted it to go?
Well, really, over there in AIT, you had a site, and you had that site on due north, okay? And off that site, they'd give you your elevation and also your direction, and that determined where you're going to place the mortar.
Okay, and who does the math on that?
There was a person that was assigned to that. Yes.
And what is that person called?
I don't remember.
But he's part of the platoon.
He was part of
the mortar outfit.
Yes, he was part of the 4th platoon. Yes.
And you know, I have to think that must have been a lot of responsibility.
It was. It was the same thing with your artillery. You know, and that person too, the fire direction person. He makes a mistake, and that round's not going where it's supposed to go.
And a lot of times, unfortunately, we were on the receiving end of some of those rounds. Which,
yes.
I guess, as far as infantry guys, biggest fear is that, you know, short rounds. You've heard of short rounds, right?
Oh yes.
And especially at night,
yes.
when they would call in artillery at night, and they'd usually do a marking round, a hide a burst.
Right.
And when the canister came down right behind you,
yep,
you knew that this was not a good. And then, of course, they would not call fire for effect. They would add 300 or whatever
yes.
the case might be.
Yes.
But it always was in the back of my mind, what if he'd have called HE on the deck first? And that, you know, and we know where that round was.
That round is coming in, you know?
Yeah. So, okay, so you tell me about when you actually left for Vietnam. Did you go to Oakland?
Yes.
I think all of us went through Oakland. What
yeah.
was that like?
Well, really, I don't remember too much about that, but I do remember a person. His name was Jesse Richardson, and I met him in the AIT, and he was on the bunk above me, and I was below, and I came in there, and Jesse says, I got a problem. I said, what's the problem, Jesse? He says, I'm scared of heights. Oh. He says, would you switch bunks with me? Sure, I have no problem, and from that point on, we became friends. And
you didn't know him from Adam?
I didn't know him at all, even though we had basic together.
Oh, darn.
Because there were more people between ours
sure.
and S's.
Yeah.
And so when we got our orders for Nam, we were going to the same company and everything else. I mean, so we got to Oakland, we got out and on the plane together, and we got to Vietnam together.
Okay, let's take it to that day. You land at Benoit.
Yes.
and they taxi and they stop the plane and they open the door. Take it from there. What was your initial reaction to Vietnam? What were you thinking, feeling, so forth?
That had to be the worst place in the world to be, because when they opened that door, the smell and the heat hit you right in the face, and you'll never ever forget that. So once you got off the plane and you go, wow, what are we doing here? So they pack you in
You
a
know,
truck.
those were my exact words. No, I'm serious. What in the world am I doing here? Now, I will have repeated that sentence probably 1,000 times while I was in Vietnam. You know, what in the world have I
Yes.
wound up in here, you know?
Absolutely, you know, and you look at when you were in Nam and you ran into the situations that you did, you knew that the chances sometimes of coming back home are very
Yeah,
slim.
oh yeah.
You know?
And that happened many times.
Yes.
So you get off the plane, you have no idea where you're going. You
Nope.
don't know yet because we didn't have any orders.
Right.
We were there, and then they took us to Long Binh.
Yes.
I think they either bussed us or whatever to Long
Yes.
Binh. And then there was an area where they go a bunk, you know, you just go claim a bunk or whatever.
Yes.
And then do you remember we used to have to show up twice a day in the bleachers? And they would call names out, and if your name was called, you'd go get your orders, and it would tell you where you were going.
I don't remember that.
When do you remember getting orders that you were going to Charlie Company?
Well, when they called out our name, Jesse and mine both, and we're going to Cu Chi. They're getting on the truck.
Yep.
Yeah, Deuce and F. And they packed us in there, and we were going along, and we just looked at those houses that the people lived in, and with the animals right next to them, and
Little kids.
and
naked.
everything. Yes, absolutely.
I know.
There was no modesty at all, you know. And then we got to Cu Chi, and then we had like 7 days of little training that they provided.
Yep. I think they called that beauty school or something.
Something
Didn't they, like that.
odd like that, yes.
And so you met then the company clerk for Charlie Company,
Mm-hmm.
and they obviously said, "Well, you're going to be in the mortar platoon."
Right.
They weren't in Cu Chi. The platoon was not in Cu Chi. They were out someplace.
That's it.
Where were they?
I don't remember. It was a battalion because there were we were sent out there, and we got to that battalion base camp, and it was a little ways out of Cu Chi. I remember that,
And what
dry season.
What month and year did you actually get into Vietnam?
I believe that it was in August that I got there.
So you and I got there the same identical time.
68
Yes, and the monsoon
was not there. It was dry when I got there.
Yep, and then but it was about that was about to change.
Yes, since Jesse and I got there at the same time, and we were introduced to our sergeant, and he said, "How would you two guys like to make a hooch together?" And we said, "Sure, no problem." So we dug a hole and filled the sandbags, and they had half culverts that you'd put the sandbags over and put some on the side and everything else, and we were happy. So Jesse's air mattress got a hole in, so he was sleeping on ammo boxes, and I had some ammo boxes with a air mattress that was full. So it started to get to the rainy season.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is, all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, Jesse says, "Stanczyk, we're getting flooded out." I said, "What are you talking about, Jesse? I have just humped. I am tired. Leave me alone. Go back to sleep." And I turned over and I turned into the water.
Oh yes.
So our hooch got all flooded.
Yep.
Out to the trucks we went. So
Now, was that Crockett? Do you remember?
I
It
think
wasn't
so.
very far from
No.
Cu Chi. That was Crockett.
that was
I
Crockett.
just wanted to make sure that
Yep.
you, for orientation purposes, that's where we were at.
Okay.
Was a place called Crockett.
That's right.
And when I got there, just like you know, they said when you get there, you find a guy named Sergeant Glover, and he'll tell you what to do.
Okay.
And so there was 3 of us that went in. Russ Bruns, Ray Bourgeois, and myself walked in the same day. and asked for Sergeant Glover. And somebody said, oh, he's over there on the other side. It's over there by the graveyard. Because right outside the wire, where we were at, was a graveyard.
Yes.
And so we went over and saw Sergeant Glover, and he just looked at us like, you guys are the new guys, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And he looked at Russ and I, and he said, well, you two go over there. And he said, you see that half round? He said, I want you to build your position there, and right inside the wire here. And so you'll be filling sandbags the rest of the day.
Yes.
And Ray, they put in the bunker right next to us.
Okay.
So, and basically, you know what, my story is identical to yours in every way. We got flooded out in that half round. Those guys that had been in the platoon for a while were there the next morning to laugh and carry on.
Yes.
I mean, it was almost like a
initiation.
It was, and they were looking forward to it, I think.
I think they were.
So we were at Crockett, and now you're the new guy. Now, was Richardson a mortar guy too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you two guys go into the mortar platoon. What was it like that first week? I mean, did the older guys kind of take you under their wing, or?
Not really. You know, they said we're going to be humping rounds. They had a little 60 mortar, and you hump the rounds, and you'll be going out on sweeps and everything else, and you also will be going out on night flights. So the first week we went out on a night flight, and we're surrounding this small village, and Jesse and I were on the same chopper, and we get off the slick and we run, and Jesse had his weapon on one round he fired, a semi-automatic.
Yes.
He fired a round. And I flew off that chopper, and the rounds went over my head. My helmet went about there, but my 16 went about 20 feet further.
Oh my God.
And I was just running, but my face, when those rounds came out, went into the rice paddy.
Oh.
So after we found out it was Jesse with us, I said, Jesse, you always have to have it on safety.
Oh
You
my
always got
gosh.
time.
Yeah, because everybody thought they were getting hit.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody thought it was on.
Oh yeah, we thought that we ran into something.
So
you know?
tell me about the little 60. What kind of were they only available with HE rounds? Is that all you could put out with the 60?
Yes, and we always humped probably 9 to 12 rounds.
Okay.
And we carried it. There was no sights. It was a base plate and a tube, and it was all done manually. You know, you fire it as far as you could, and it was more for. I don't think it did a lot of damage to anybody, but it was psych. You know, the
And it
enemy.
kept their heads down.
Yes, because they did, they heard a mortar.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Well, they did the same to us. Like, remember when we were at Reed? They used to fire every afternoon. There'd be one or two of those little 60 mortars come in.
Yes.
And it wasn't like they ever destroyed anything, but the fear of God. I mean, when you heard those mortars coming in, it put the fear of God in you, because you didn't know where it was going to land.
That's right. Absolutely. You ducked. You went for the
just
nearest.
laying on the ground or something.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
when you say you were out at night, you must have been with us.
I would say different.
I mean, because you were supporting us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
what I thought.
Yep.
And I think I shared this with you and Phil Iserino. I remember one time when you guys humped, what was it, 80s or 4 deuces? What's the big one?
81 is what we always said.
Okay, 81.
Yeah.
And the base plate on that thing is heavy.
Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
one of you guys had to hump that. You had a backpack thing and I thought, man, that's got to be the worst job in the world, especially in the rice paddies.
Oh,
if
yes.
you were walking in the rice paddies with that thing on, it would, you sunk down anyway.
Yes.
That must have been a misery.
It was heavy.
Did you ever get assigned to
Oh
do-
yes, I think everybody humped it once or twice. Fortunately, we didn't have to hump it every day.
And the tube, was it very heavy?
The tube wasn't real heavy, probably about 30 pounds.
And then you had a
30.
separate
sight.
sight.
Yes.
So 3 pieces,
3 pieces.
base plate, get that thing in, put the sight on.
And then you had 2 poles that you'd set out North 6400.
Just like artillery.
Just like artillery, and they would have a little flashlight on there, and that's what you went off
Oh,
at
for
night.
heaven's sake.
Yes.
So, and I will tell you, there were, I'm writing a book,
Oh,
and
okay.
I tell about how many times we were out on ambush patrols at night,
Yes.
and we would have pre-designated spots,
Yes.
you know, like Alpha, Bravo, they call them different things. But you guys were zeroed in on every one of those predetermined spots, so that if we actually got in contact
Yes.
and they were in this little area, we'd call that.
Right.
And you'd put the mortars in
rounds
that
in
area.
there, yes.
But another thing, maybe even more importantly, you guys did for us is that you provided illumination.
Absolutely.
And like at night when you pop an ambush, the quicker you can get illumination so you can see actually what you're up against,
Yes.
you have the advantage. In other words, we had the advantage.
Right.
And I've got to tell you, I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, I can't believe how fast you guys did that.
Yeah,
I mean, we'd call for that illumination, and it seemed like it went out the tube. I mean, I don't know how you guys did that.
you know, there were sacks of charge on it, and you'd have a couple rounds all set, so that in case they would call. And you're right, you had spots, you had a direction on illumination. You didn't have a pinpoint, you had a direction. But the big thing was that you would get that illumination up and behind the enemy, so that the enemy didn't have the vision that you had.
Oh yes, yeah. And I don't know if any of us ever told you or not, but that saved a lot of lives. You guys actually really played a super important part in us being able to figure out in a quick hurry, you know, what we had to do to have a successful outcome.
Well, you know what, John, it wasn't one person. I mean, every person in Vietnam had a role and everything else, and it wasn't important what the role was. It was how well they did that role, because we depended on everyone else, just like they depended on us.
Yep.
And you know what? If one link in a chain breaks, there is an issue, and that's the way I feel about Vietnam. The person back in Cu Chi that was supplying us, the helicopter pilots, the Air Force, the Navy, it was the combined effort that saved lives.
Yep. And when you went into the platoon, do you remember some of the names of the guys that were in the mortar platoon with you?
I do. Besides Jesse, I mean, because he was so close, and I could tell you stories forever about him and I. But the other people, you know, Iserino, Phil I remembered him right away. And Schwartz.
He was the only one that didn't have to carry the base plate.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, he wasn't there long because he got hit in the legs. And he wasn't there very long, but he made an impact on me. I remembered the name right away, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was his friendship and everything. Dennis Manigan was another one, Charles Coyer. Schwartz was another one, you know, and there were many more, but I have forgotten names over time. The faces I remember.
Oh yes.
You know, you don't forget.
And
faces.
especially days, incidences, things that happen. I mean, those things come back.
Oh, they do.
Just like that it was yesterday. So did you ever keep in touch with any of those guys when you came home?
Dennis Manigan. We got in touch because his wife was from Wisconsin, and we went to his parents and her parents, and also Charles Coyer. I tried calling him once, and we talked a little bit, but that was about it.
How about Richardson?
Jesse, there was a problem because when we came back, we bought each other a drink in San Francisco. And we were so happy, and his plane was leaving right away, and I never got his address.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Oh.
No phone number, no address. He never got, maybe he got one letter the whole time we were in Vietnam.
No.
That was it. He never had anything coming from home.
Did you ever ask him about that?
I
mean, here you're getting letters every
Yes.
day. You're getting packages,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you shared the cookies with him.
Oh,
or
absolutely.
What? I mean, what was going on there? Do you think?
I don't know actually a lot. He didn't really speak too much about home. You know,
So it probably wasn't good.
I would probably go with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you don't know whether he's alive today or not?
He passed away in 2007, from what I heard.
How did you find that out?
By going on the internet.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And before the internet was available, I went to the library and looked up Memphis, Tennessee, and looked up Richardson.
Oh,
see if
for
I could
heaven's
find him.
sake!
But there was nothing.
Yeah.
So you know you were lost before the internet because you didn't have that information available.
Well, in 2003, when I started looking for the guys, to actually do all the reunion stuff and so forth, I was dialing numbers out of White Pages directories.
Yes.
And thousands of phone numbers I dialed because if you're looking for Michael Smith,
Yes.
guess how many Michael Smiths there are?
Absolutely.
I mean, it was now when the internet came, I was able to zero in and I was able to shorten, make a lot less phone calls
Yes.
that way.
Yeah.
And then of course when I finally woke up and I figured out I could buy reports and after action reports and rosters from the archives.
Oh.
Then I would at least get a list of all the guys that were in Charlie Company.
Yes.
That's how I really started getting going.
Wow.
And then with that list, everybody's social security number was there.
Yes.
Because that was our number.
That was our number. Yes.
And so then I learned that I could purchase a consumer report through a company called Intelisys. And it would tell me you had to have the social.
Okay.
If I did, it would tell you where they were at currently, where they'd lived in the last 10 years, if they had a phone number, and any relatives that were related to them.
Wow.
Well, guess what? That revolutionized my ability to find guys, and that's when we really got rocking and rolling as far as that goes. So, but Richardson, yeah, that's too bad. I feel kind of bad that you didn't keep in touch with him, during all those years, because
Right.
it sounds like you two guys were pretty close.
Oh, we were. When I humped, and we had to stay out at night because someone maybe was KIA. He would bring me out something to eat, candy, poncho liner. In fact, one time we humped and we got some guys killed, and we couldn't get them, so we set up a perimeter, and they let the slick come in with the 81s, and Jesse was on it, of course, and but when Chinook was coming in, he shot RPGs trying to not hit that, so the Chinook took off.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
Yeah, he didn't stay around, so we got no food and anything. We had nothing to eat all day. There was one person in that that received some candy and everything else, and a poncho liner and everything else, because it rained at about 4 o'clock, and we were cold.
Freezing to death.
Yep, and that was me because of Jesse. And when Jesse humped out, bring him out some cigarettes. You always got cigarettes in your pack of food, right?
The little sundry pack.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I didn't smoke, so he got all mine all the time, and some candy, and I did the same thing for him. We took care of each other.
Do you remember we used to get either 2 beers or 2 sodas a day?
Absolutely. Yep.
And I didn't drink, so I was always trading my beer. There was this guy named Ed Rambo, and
Yep.
he was one of the first ones that I kind of got next to when I went in the platoon. And he always wanted that beer. He was a beer drinker. But you could get all the free cigarettes.
Oh, yes.
You could carry, really.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
sundry packs were just full of that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
But the 2 beers or the 2 sodas, that was quite a, that was like a treat,
Oh, it was a treat.
So, do you remember the very first time that you were out in the field and you guys got shot at?
Yes.
First firefight.
Yeah, I do. In fact, I was carrying radio at that time, and all I could hear was whiz going over my head.
Oh, yeah.
And you hit the ground no matter where you were at, and fortunately, things worked out.
Were you scared?
Oh, gosh. Scared isn't the word. I don't think you really had time to really feel that because you were so scared. You didn't know what was happening. You didn't know where it was coming from or anything.
And did that day, I mean, did that result in a firefight? Did we return fire, and was there a short battle or what?
It was real short.
Yeah.
I mean, because I just remember as soon as you hear a few rounds, the 60s, our 60s would be, you know,
Oh, yeah,
machine guns be taken off right
Yeah.
then and there, you know. And, I mean, return fire was automatic.
Did you enjoy the helicopter rides?
No. It always seemed like you're going to be going into something and you didn't know where the heck you're going to make it or not.
How about the ride itself, though? Did
You know, it
you
was
ever get a
interesting.
rush from just flying?
Well, you know what was really neat is the pilots and everything else. I mean, they always looked, you know, back before they took off to make sure you were okay, and you know, they had guts. I mean,
Oh,
they flew in spots that I don't know.
I still can't believe it. Thinking
don't
back, I cannot believe
No,
it.
no, they had guts.
And you know, we were sitting ducks.
Oh, we
in,
were.
in that helicopter when they would come down and flare.
Yes.
That was it. I mean, you were a duck right there, and if they would have opened up, which they did,
Yeah.
you know, it was just through the grace of God, I think, that you and I didn't catch one right then and there.
Especially when they were coming in the 60s on the helicopter, it would open up, and
Oh.
you're wondering, oh my gosh!
Yeah.
At the beginning, what the
It
heck?
was real chaos, wasn't it?
Oh, it
I mean, it
was.
was just
It was.
like, and your adrenaline
Oh yes.
would just hit your
Yeah.
chest like somebody punched you right in the
Yes.
chest. Do you remember the first time you actually were out there when somebody got killed?
Yes.
And tell me about that.
You wondered why the commander, your captain, would go to a situation like as if he was putting you out there just to get shot. And what I mean is, there was one time that we were humping and we came upon a camp from the Viet Cong or the MA, and we came in a good way, and they had all their perimeter set up facing the open part, but we came in from the back way, and they took off. They had their food cooking and everything else yet. So the next day we're going to go there and destroy that. But we walk right straight out into that open area, and they opened up on us.
Oh my gosh.
And I says, oh, this made no sense.
That was stupid.
That was stupid.
Yeah.
Why not bring artillery in ahead of time and mortars in
Yeah.
before you ever got there?
Yeah. Because you knew
You knew
they were there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was is that the time that somebody got killed?
Yeah.
Do you remember who it was?
I do not. But I remember his face, and I remember putting him on a helicopter.
What was going through your mind?
How stupid this was. He didn't have to die. You know? It was just plain stupid.
And you went someplace beyond fear. You went
yes.
someplace way beyond, right? I mean,
Yes.
when you realized that this person could have been a friend or an acquaintance, you saw him in the chow line, he's dead. He's really dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're thinking, you know, I've got a wife and baby at home.
Well, I don't think you gave that much.
I mean, but I'm here.
Yeah.
I mean, why is it him and not me?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you ever think that?
Yeah. Jesse got hit in the back, right shoulder, from her own 60s coming in when we were going out on a sweep. And he dove in a hole that was actually, I believe, the hole that I made, little foxhole. But he was close to that one, and I took a different one. You know, when you hear something going on, I mean, you look for cover.
Oh boy. And the worst thing is when there isn't any.
Exactly.
When you're out in the open and all you have is laying on the ground, man,
Yeah.
that's a bad feeling.
Oh, it is. It is. I mean, you got nothing to hide about. You probably don't even have your 16 with you if you're back in camp, because whatever you were doing.
What was the worst day that you can remember you had in Vietnam?
Oh, that was a tough one. I think when you okay, there was a time we were humping, and there was a sniper up in trees, and he was picking off the lieutenants, the captain, and the RTOs. And I remember that. And the artillery finally got him. He strapped himself in a tree. He had his rifle on a rope so that he could let go of it, but it wouldn't fall to the ground. He could pull it back up and take another shot. And I think that was the worst one.
You know what? You described that, and I don't know, maybe we were together that day, but I remember that same identical scenario where the guy was tied in.
Yes.
He had a bag of rice, I'll never forget. It was like a bag of rice that was hanging on a little string that he had up there.
Yes.
And then the rifle on the rope. And and I remember, because my impression was that's commitment.
Yes.
He's committed. That guy, I mean, he's in there for the end. I mean, he's not going anywhere.
And he was, absolutely, you're 100% right. He was.
But yeah, that was absolutely, that was horrifying.
It was because, we bring in the HE, and get up again, and no more than you'd get up and somebody'd go down again.
Yeah. Do you remember who your platoon leader was, or your platoon sergeant?
I remember Sergeant Meyer, and even back in '68, there was racism, even over there, because I was the head of the 3rd squad, and all the black guys would come to my squad, and I got along with them real good. I mean, because as soon as they'd come in, we'd sit down and we'd say, hey, when we move from one place to another, the first thing we do is we're going to fortify this position. And I'm going to tell you.
And that means sandbagging and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And if you're not going to help, I'm telling you right now, you're not coming in here. And so everybody worked together.
Well, you were pretty direct about that.
Oh, we were very strong. But it was the whole squad.
Yeah.
It wasn't only me as the leader, it was the squad. And my squad, if somebody would be hurting that day, somebody else would volunteer and go out. So that person didn't have to. So the other thing is, they like different music than I liked. No problem.
Yes.
You play your music, I play mine. I have no problem with anything like that at all. I mean, we share. When I'd get the care package, I'd share with them just as when they got one, they shared with me. We took care of each other. It didn't matter where we came from. And I think that was one of the biggest things. But Sergeant Meyer was special. So we sent up a new base camp, new fire position. And we had all 3 of our 81s out there, 1st squad, 2nd squad, and I was 3rd. And all of a sudden, we had to send out 1 round to settle the base plate. And he came over there and he was chewing me out because we fired the round in the wrong direction. 2 rounds went straight that way, 1 went that way. And he was hollering at me. And I was just sitting there just like this here, and when he got done, I says, direction 6400? Yep. Which way is my tube pointed? He looked at it, and I was pointed in the right direction.
The other 2 were
second, and he went to those first, and they said it was the 3rd squad. He just got red in his face, left, and my ammo carriers were sitting there, and they says, you just let him go, didn't you? Yep. When somebody wants to make a fool out of himself, I will give him all the line he wants. He never came back to our squad for anything again, never complained about us or anything.
That brings up an interesting thought for me. You said there's 3 tubes in the platoon.
Yes.
So 3 squads.
Yes.
What determines? Okay, are all 3 of those tubes pointed in the same area when a fire mission comes on? Does everybody kind of put the rounds? Does everybody fire? Only 1 tube fire? How does that work?
Sometimes they'll fire only 1 tube. But remember what you just said about having different position, A, B, and C? They'll have a tube set up for each position. So if there was a fire mission real quick and they wanted, let's say, the 3rd squad or, that I was in, that's because that was the position that you called in. So we'd fire that one. Now the other 2 would change, to get the same thing. So all 3 of us could fire if we had to. But that was one of the things that we did, yes.
Did you ever have any really long nights where we were out there, where you were supporting us and it was just an all-night thing and you had to put illumination up for a long time?
Yes. In fact, I don't know which one it was, but they were trying to sneak in. And there was a long bamboo along the rice paddy, and they were trying to crawl in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to put in the illumination. And the worst part is, if you were humping that day and you were out, but now that night you also were on the bunker line, that was hard staying up.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know, you were tired, and before the starlights came in,
Mm-hmm.
and that was early 60, or I should say late 68s, we had very little.
Yeah.
I mean, if you heard something, you'd ask for an illumination, but once the starlights came, it really gave you an advantage.
You bet. Yeah.
You know?
Did you get to take an R&R?
Yes.
And
Hawaii.
where did you go? Did you go back to Hawaii and see your wife?
Yep. I seen my wife, Jerry, and Brian.
And what was that like?
Well, I was on the last bus. So Jerry was in a reception area and she's waiting. And bus load would come in, I wasn't on it. Bus load would come in, I wasn't on it. I was on the last one. And finally I came out, you know, it was like unbelievable. You know you're on it. I waited as long as I possibly
Was this
could.
6 months? Had you been there 6 months
I
when you
was there
got your
almost 9 months.
before you got your R&R?
I didn't want to leave there because I knew it was going to be too hard to come back.
Buddy, I was just going to ask you that.
Yes.
What in the world? Here, and you got a week, right? With
Yes.
your wife and child.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well,
Yes.
how did you turn around and get back on that bus?
Because I knew it's going to be a short time and I'll be back home. That is why, and that's why I waited. You know, some soldiers, as soon as they could, they went on.
Yeah, and
R&R.
usually it was about 6 months.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I waited until it.
I bet your wife was just so sad to see you get back on
Oh,
that.
it
I bet
was
it was
tough.
very traumatic.
It was, you know, because here, first time flying, and here she had a baby in her arms.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and the one thing that Jerry says that in terminals, airports, people were very helpful. You know, directing her. Businessmen went out of their way to say, okay, you have to walk down here and it'll be on your left-hand side, and gave her direction. In fact, one businessman actually helped her by taking her luggage, you know,
Oh,
that she
wow.
had to carry on and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and carried her along with it, you know, took it along with her.
That's great.
Yes.
So did you served the full 12 months,
11 months, 27 days.
okay? And so you're getting ready to ETS, you get your orders,
Mm-hmm.
you're back in Kuchi.
Yes.
What were the last 3 or 4 days like in Kuchi?
Well, that was good. Well, let's back up before I got to Kuchi. I got to ride on one of those observation helicopters. I think we call them coyotes.
Oh,
The
yes.
little ones.
Yeah, yeah.
And the guy said, you can ride with me if you want to. And I said, I'm out of the field. I'll ride anything to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I got out to that thing. And he said, make sure you strap yourself in and hang on. And I'll tell you what, he gave me the ride of my life.
So those are the ones they were very maneuverable, weren't they?
Yes, he'd fly right at the treetops, and all of a sudden he'd turn, and you, whoa, hang on.
Wow.
It was amazing. Then we got to Kuchi, and you know, everything settled down. I mean, the last 3-4 days were, you know, just passing the time, more or less, you know. And we walked around to different places, you know, artillery, and we had a few beers and things like that, you know.
Yep. Did you ever get wounded in Vietnam?
Yes, I got shrapnel from RPG in the chest.
Oh yeah. Okay. And when was that in your tour?
Ooh, that was after I came back from R&R, so probably 10 months in or so. And what happened, an RPG came into our encampment there, and hit my gunner at that time, and he was going into shock because the shrapnel had hit him in the head, you know, and blood was running into his eyes. And, you know, if you can't see, that's the worst thing,
Oh,
you know.
my God.
So I said, Willie, don't worry about it, you know how you bleed from the head here. Give me a towel. And I
Well,
put
and
that towel
a
on
head
that.
wound's the worst anyway.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
It bleeds worse than anything
Yeah.
else.
And I got hit in the side, and one of my ammo bearers got hit in the back. And I went to after I got Willie squared away and everything else, I went to our lieutenant, and I says that our gun is out, you know. He says, could it fire? I said, yeah, I can fire it if you need to. And he said, let's go. So he came out there and he got a round.
Well, for heaven's
yeah,
sake.
he got the round ready and I got the direction and everything else. And we dropped the round, the tube was dented in from the shrapnel, so the round hung. So we couldn't fire it.
It hung up.
It hung.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
So
Oh,
we
my.
had to tip the tube over, and I had my hands like there, and
Oh,
grabbed
buddy.
the round and fired
Buddy.
it off the other gun. So that was
That's kind of something you'd see in a movie.
yeah, absolutely.
You would never think that would be a real life, that's happening to me, you know, type of thing.
Yeah, that it was. Willie never came back out to the field, and I knew that right away because you could see his skull, you know.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the ammo bearer and I did come back out to the field.
What do you remember about when you landed back in the United States? What were your feelings when that? Well, what was it like to take off in the Freedom Bird?
Well, is it going to drop in the ocean? That was the first question you had, you know.
Am I really going to make it?
Yes, yes.
Why is it that we all had that same thought?
Yeah. Well, because
It was a desperate, you know, I've been here for a year.
Right.
Is this the way it's going to end?
Is that going to end that way? And you know, the last 30 days that you were in Nam, it seemed like many other guys got killed
Oh,
because they were too careful.
I'm
You know.
telling you.
That was the worst time. Beginning 30 days or last 30 days. Those were the worst.
Yeah, you're absolutely
You know?
correct.
And so yeah, we, you know, on the way here, Jesse and I flew back in. Like I say, we got to San Francisco and we actually kissed the ground. We physically kissed the ground and said, "Man, we're back in the United States, and I'll never leave it again."
Yeah. And did you have any time left to serve when you got home?
Yes, we had the 6 months just like you.
And where did you go?
We went to Fort Carson, Colorado.
Okay.
And Jerry and Brian went with me, and you know, that was a good place. But you know, after being in Vietnam, you know, you're not going to listen to someone to tell you to pick up butts.
What was your job for the last 6 months? What did they have you doing?
A lot of times it would be sergeant of the guard, you know, because they'd send people out, you know, and if you were a private, and there weren't many of us, most of us that were sergeants. So, I mean, that's what you did on the weekends, is being sergeant of the guard.
Mm-hmm. And you know, you touched on something really important. When we came home, even though we had been hardcore military in Vietnam, we were not ready to play Army when we came home.
Yes,
Does that describe it pretty accurately?
absolutely.
And I think a lot of us kind of got in trouble a little bit because we wouldn't play Army. Like you know, these guys back home had never been to Vietnam, and they were still playing Army.
Yes.
And then they'd get us.
Yes.
And we just didn't act right to them. You know, we didn't act right.
Absolutely right. You know, we came back here, and I was on the battalion pistol team. I didn't do very good, but I was on it. And so that took time away from your training, you know.
Yeah.
When you came back, and I said, what am I training for? I'm out of here.
You're getting ready to go.
You got it. And that didn't sit too well with our sergeant there. And so I got sergeant of the guard quite a bit.
So was home Wisconsin then?
It was
Okay.
Wisconsin.
And when you got out of the Army, you were like me. You probably just did your 2 years and got out.
Absolutely.
When you went home, did you have a job waiting, or what was in your mind as far as what were you going to pursue?
Yes, I did. I worked in a paper mill before I left, so I had a good job waiting. The end result is I also, when I was in, backing up a little bit, those 6 months, I also took a class in mail service, you know, postal. So because being wounded and everything else, scored pretty high on that test,
Yes.
right?
And you know, a lot of us vets went to the post office.
Yes,
I mean, a lot of vets went to the post office, and it was a good opportunity.
yes, but I was a fool because that opportunity came to me, but I was working in a paper mill, and the paper mill was paying more than what the postal was at that time, so I took the paper mill.
Yeah.
And to this day, I wonder what it would have been if I'd went to the mail service
Yeah.
and got those benefits.
Oh,
you
there
know?
were great benefits.
Oh, they were great. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, how long did you work at the paper mill?
I worked at the paper mill for 9 years.
Okay.
And it was swing shift, but then they decided to change it, the shift, so that you'd be on for, let's say, 7 days, and then you'd be off for 2, and then you'd be working 5, and then you'd be, off for 3.
You could never get in a routine.
No, no, and it was great for some individuals that would be hunting or fishing, but being a family person, no, it didn't work at all. So then I went to Mills Fleet Farm, which was similar to Lowe's, Menards, Home Depot, and worked my way up to managing a store for about 19, 20 years. And at that time, my youngest son graduated from college, and I decided that I got tired of dealing with adult children. And so then I went to a cabinet shop, and then I went to 2 years there, and then I went to the state of Wisconsin and worked there for a remainder of the time.
Now I'm going to back you up again.
Okay.
You get home. Did your family put on a little welcome home party? Did they gather and welcome you home?
No. My dad and mom, we didn't have parties because of the business they were in. It was 24/7
Okay.
that they were open. I mean, I knew my dad was grateful that I made it home.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? No doubt about that. So that, my siblings and Jerry, of course. The biggest thing when I got home is that my youngest brother, at that time, we went to shoot the bow. I used to hunt all the time, and I hadn't shot the bow, so he had a bow with some arrows and everything with razor blades for deer hunting. We shot them in a bale, so I went to get the arrows, and he shot off a little firecracker, an M80.
Oh, no.
And there was one hop, 6 feet behind the bales, onto the. I could have stuck myself with those arrows because arrows were in my hand. Oh, did he come running? And I didn't know what happened.
Oh, no, you just reacted.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know what happened. All of a sudden, I'm looking around. Why am I on the ground and everything else? And my wife and my sister and him come running, and he was so upset that he did that. No idea.
Yeah. And so life then went on. You had more children.
Yep, I had one more son,
And his name again?
Stephen.
Okay, and what is Stephen doing?
Well, Stephen's went to college, and he is a great artist. So he works in Raleigh, and he works for a company that does marketing, and he is one of the head individuals there. And my oldest son, he works for injection molding plastics.
Oh, yeah.
And he is head engineer there.
I've always wondered how they did that.
It is really interesting because they put the plastic into a mold and it comes out, but of course there's things you have to do. Everything affects plastics. Temperature, moisture, humidity, gases, type of resin. So it's really challenging.
Every time I take one of those bottles of water, and there's different kinds. Some of them have hard plastic, but the cheapies are real thin plastic.
Absolutely.
And there are pallets and how do they kick out those plastic bottles in the quantity that it takes to? How do they do that?
I have no idea. My son works. Well, a couple of things that he does is lights for one of the big car companies like Ferrari or one of them, and I don't remember which one. But those lights are $10,000 per light.
Oh my!
Yes. And then he also does lenses for like John Deere, Cub Cadet. They're working on different things. High energy lights for snowplows. So that's Pierce.
Wow.
So it's he does some really great work.
Yep. Do you have any grandkids?
One, Brianna.
And what is Brianna doing these days?
Brianna works for Home Depot, and she's really doing well. She's 22 now, so she's an adult, and likes to remind us that she is an adult.
Sure, sure. Any great grandkids yet?
None.
Okay,
none.
that'll happen one of these days.
Well, my youngest son and his wife are not going to have any children.
Okay.
And we respect that. And Brianna right now is not interested in,
Well, she's young.
Yes, 22,
Yeah.
you don't have to be 30, 40 now to have children.
I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, through it all, you've been married 50 years,
Yes,
which for most Vietnam veterans, it isn't even conceivable. Because most of us, me included, when we came, you were married before you went.
correct.
When a lot of us came home and got married, we didn't do it very good. We didn't know how to cope with being in a relationship. So a lot of our buddies had more than one marriage.
Yes,
Some had 2, 3 marriages.
right.
And so I know what it was like to have my first wife.
Mhm.
And you don't have a lot of, usually if you're divorced, there's some bad deal. The second wife, right?
Mhm.
And the same thing.
Yes,
And then the third wife, in my case, was that was the charm.
hmm
And, my wife Laura, and I will tell anybody that'll listen, she saved me
yes,
from, from a lot. So what I want you to do is I want you to look into the camera and I want you to tell me, what does your wife mean to you?
Well, I guess the best thing to say, would you do it again? And would you marry the same person? And the answer is yes. We're opposites, so she really helps me sometimes temper my emotions, and I do the same for her. But I think it's a give and take. Being married is not a 50-50 or 100 percentage. It's actually 150%. And by that I mean is that when one person can't give 100%, the other person has to step in and take up the slack. So you got to put in 150%.
Boy, that's a good perspective. That's great.
And that's my feeling, And what doesn't make a marriage succeed? I guess it's really tough because it's so easy to say, okay, I'm not going to do it, And when we came back from Vietnam, we were very, very emotional in some ways.
Oh, yes.
And very hard in others. And, we didn't show a lot of emotions. And even to this day, I have tough times sometimes. My emotions aren't there. And other emotions are really high, I can sit there and watch a show, and next thing you know, I got tears in my eyes. And, the next show, it doesn't bother me. Sometimes in real life, it doesn't bother you.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah. And I know I experienced the same thing, and sometimes I've questioned myself, is there something wrong with me?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think I should be reacting this way, but it's not in me to do it. So I always do that. I go, is there something wrong with me? Well, if you really think about it and what we went through in Vietnam, it changed a lot of our makeup.
Yes.
We came home. My mother's famous statement is, the son that came home wasn't the son I sent to Vietnam. And she was right on. And she spotted that, by the way, right after I came home. So obviously something happened, right? If your own mother,
absolutely.
sees that something's changed.
Yes.
What is your definition of a hero?
A hero. That's a person that cares about someone else more than they care about themselves. And to me, that's a hero. And it doesn't have to be someone that is a high level in government or anything. It's someone in everyday life that changes a person that walks in within 6 feet of themselves. That's a hero.
Did you serve with any heroes in Vietnam?
I think everyone that I served with is my hero, because not for them, I wouldn't be here. So, yes, you can say that the person that lost their life there or limbs or anything like that, they are heroes, but there's also the other guys that you served with too that made it home. Because not for them, you wouldn't be here.
That's
And,
true.
you know, not for you, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And you know, so when you look at a hero, it's someone in everyday life that has touched you or that you have touched.
Mhm. What does the American flag mean to you?
To me, it means everything because without the United States, and we look at other countries and you see the poverty and the misery and the racism that is out there in other countries, and you look at the United States, even though it's not perfect, you have more here than what you'd have anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and you know, you said freedom. People around the world don't even have a concept. Many countries, there is no freedom. I mean, we take it for granted.
Yes.
And yet these third world countries, and I have friends that have come from that. Like I have some Russian friends. You know, if people think Russia's all that good, talk to somebody that's gotten out of there.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not at all what anybody would think it would be. Yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to say, they don't know what freedom is because they never experienced it. This is norm to them.
Yes, yes.
You know, so they don't know what it is. So when they get over here, it's an eye-opener for them.
Yeah. Now, I had mentioned in the very beginning that we're going to have this on the internet for 100 years. We're going to make sure that it's up there. So that means that potentially there are going to be generations and generations of Stanczyks that are going to be watching this possibly 50 years from now.
Right.
I want you to give those folks your best advice. If you could go 50 years in the future and give them advice, what would you tell them?
To try to help less fortunate people than yourself. And then it doesn't have to be so much monetarily wise, but yourself. Give yourself. Help someone else. If you could do something for someone every day, that would be something that I'd be very proud of. And it might be a simple thing as you see someone struggling putting their groceries in the trunk of their car. To grab that 50-pound bag of salt and put it in the car. That would be something that I admire from anybody.
We've talked about our Vietnam story. Is there anything that I haven't mentioned or brought up that's important to you in your story that you want to include in this interview?
I think the biggest thing is that, not for John here, having the reunions, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have met Phil or the other people that served with me. So, you know, when I look at that, all the effort that him and his wife and his son Tim have put to get us together again, to have a moment together, to reflect on what we went through, to me, that was probably one of the things that I really appreciate, and I can't tell you how much I do.
Wow, I can't thank you enough for saying that.
Well, it comes from the heart.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Well, it's been a tremendous journey since 2003. I mean, it really has, and I think, and Tim will tell you, to us, this is the finale. Us being able to sit down one-on-one and actually have a complete story of our service in Vietnam. This is what I had as a dream, and I guess you could say we're living the dream. Every time I sit down with another one of you guys, I'm living my dream.
Well, I think every day you live your dream because you know what? It's a journey. Life's a journey.
It is.
And, you know, every day is important.
Yeah.
And we know that lights are going to be going out because as we're getting up there.
That's just the way it is, sure.
That's the way it is. That's the natural form of life.
Yeah.
So got to make the most of it and try to do the things that make us happy.
Yeah. Well, Larry, thank you, my friend, for taking your time and sharing a piece of your life with me today.
Thank you very much, John.
And bless your heart, I appreciate it a lot.
Me too.